I came home from the hospital on March 15th, 2024 to find a stranger changing the locks on my front door. Let me say that again because I still don't believe it myself. I came home to my own house, the house I'd lived in for 40 years, and there was a locksmith on my porch at 2:47 in the afternoon drilling out the deadbolt I'd installed with my own hands in 1987. A young couple stood next to him. Mid-30s, maybe. The woman held a set of shiny new keys. The man had his phone out already dialing. They both looked at me like I was the problem. I just spent 2 weeks in cardiac ICU. My chest was still bandaged from the emergency surgery that saved my life. I could barely lift my overnight bag from the passenger seat of my car. "Excuse me," I said, my voice weak from the breathing tube they'd only removed 3 days earlier. "What's going on here?" The man stepped forward, positioning himself between me and my own front door. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. This is our property." Our property. I looked past him at 447 Maple Drive. The white shutters my wife Margaret had painted the summer before she died. The porch swing where we'd watched thunderstorms roll in across the valley. The rose garden she'd tended every morning, which was blooming now in late March, pink and yellow and red against the gray siding. "Think there's been a mistake," I said. "This is my house. I've lived here since 1984. The woman pulled paperwork from her purse. Her hands were shaking. "We closed on this property 2 days ago. We have the deed. We have the signed contract. We paid $340,000. She thrust the papers at me. I took them because I didn't know what else to do. There it was. Sale agreement for 447 Maple Drive. Seller, Thomas James Castellano. That's me. Sale price, $340,000. Closing date, March 13th, 2024. The day I was still in ICU, barely conscious, with tubes in my chest and monitors beeping out the rhythm of my damaged heart. "I didn't sell this house," I said. "I was in the hospital. I've been in the hospital." The man's expression shifted from anger to something worse. Pity. "Sir, if you're confused, we can call someone for you, a family member." "Do you have a son or daughter who can?" "My son," I said. The words came out automatically. Derek Castellano, call him." I gave them the number, watched the man dial, watched him wait, watched him shake his head. "Voicemail," I tried myself. Same thing, Derek's voice, casual and upbeat. "Hey, this is Derek, leave a message." The beep that followed felt like a door slamming. I'd called him 17 times from the hospital, 17 times in 2 weeks. He'd texted back twice. "Busy with work, Dad, feel better." The locksmith finished his work. The new deadbolt clicked into place with a sound that echoed in my chest, right where the surgeons had cracked me open. "I need to see that paperwork again," I said. The woman hesitated, then handed it back. I flipped through pages I should have recognized, should have signed, should have been present for. There was my signature, or something close to it. And there, on the power of attorney document dated February 28th, 2024, was Derek's signature as my legal representative. February 28th, the day I'd coded on the operating table. The day they brought me back and I woke up not knowing if I'd ever wake up again. The day my son decided to sell my life out from under me. The police arrived at 3:15 p.m. I remember the exact time because I kept checking my watch. This old Timex Margaret gave me on our 20th anniversary, thinking somehow if I knew what time it was, I could make sense of what was happening. I couldn't. The officer looked at the paperwork, looked at me, looked at the young couple who were now standing with their arms around each other, realizing they'd walked into something terrible. "This is a civil matter," he said. "You'll need to contact a lawyer." "But this is my house," I said, my voice cracked. "I didn't sell it. I was unconscious. My son forged." "Sir, I understand you're upset, but I can't make that determination. These folks have legal documentation showing they purchased this property. You'll need to sort this out in court." In my wallet, I had $127, a hospital discharge paper, and an insurance card. I had no house. No son who would answer his phone, and nowhere to go. The woman, her name was Melissa, I learned later, touched her husband's arm. "Jason, we should let him get his things." They let me inside, my inside, for 45 minutes while the spring sun slanted through windows I'd cleaned last month, while the scent of Margaret's lavender sachets still hung in the hallway closet. I packed a life into one suitcase. What do you take? What matters when everything matters? This is my story. And if you think it ends with me broken, homeless, betrayed by my own blood, you're wrong. Before I tell you what happened next, before I explain how I went from that driveway to where I am now, I need you to understand something. This sounds impossible, doesn't it? A son stealing his father's house, forging documents while his father fights for his life in a hospital bed. It sounds like something from a movie, some exaggerated drama that couldn't happen in real life, but it did happen. It happens every single day to people just like me. If you're watching this, I need you to do something for me. Hit that like button. Subscribe to this channel. Because what I'm about to tell you gets more unbelievable from here, and I need people to hear it. I need people to know what happens when you trust the wrong person, even when that person is your own child. Especially when that person is your own child. If you've ever been betrayed by family, you'll understand what comes next. If you've ever had someone you loved, someone you sacrificed everything for, turn around and destroy you, you'll recognize the feeling I'm about to describe. And if you haven't experienced that yet, if you're lucky enough to still believe that blood is thicker than water, that family means something sacred, then watch carefully. Learn from my mistakes. Protect yourself in ways I never thought I'd need to. Because here's what nobody tells you about betrayal. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't come with warning signs or dramatic music. It comes on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon in March with a locksmith and a young couple holding keys to your life, while your son's phone goes straight to voicemail. So there I stood on my own driveway at 3:30 p.m. The police officer was getting back in his cruiser. Jason and Melissa Chen, I know their names now. I know everything about them now, stood on what was legally their porch, watching me with a mixture of anger and growing horror as they realized they'd been caught in something ugly. My chest hurt, not just from the surgery, though that pain was real enough. This was deeper. This was the feeling of understanding, for the first time in 67 years, that I was completely alone. Derek wasn't answering because Derek didn't want to answer. Derek had done this deliberately, carefully. While I was sedated and dying, he'd stolen everything. And he'd thought I was too weak, too old, too broken by grief to fight back. He was wrong about that last part, but I'm getting ahead of myself. You need to understand what 447 Maple Drive meant to me, what it represented, what Derek took when he sold it. We bought that house in June of 1984 for $67,000. Margaret was 28 years old. I was 30. We'd been married 3 years and had saved every penny, living in a cramped apartment above a dry cleaner that made our clothes smell like chemicals and steam. The day we got the keys, I carried her over the threshold. She laughed so hard she nearly kicked the doorframe. Her hair smelled like the apple shampoo she always used. That scent stayed in that house for 40 years, even after she was gone. I'd walk through the hallway and catch hints of it like she'd just stepped out to the garden. Derek was born in that house. Well, not literally, Margaret went to the hospital for that, but we brought him home to 447 Maple Drive when he was 2 days old. 3 in the morning on September 14, 1985. He screamed the whole way home. Margaret held him and sang something soft I couldn't quite hear over his crying, and when we walked through that front door, he went quiet, like he knew, like he understood he was home. We measured his height on the kitchen doorframe every birthday. Started when he was 3. I'd put a pencil mark and write the date next to it in my careful accountant's handwriting. September 14, 1988, 3 years old. September 14, 1995, 10 years old. The last mark was September 14, 2003. He was 18, 6 feet tall. He left for college 2 weeks later and never really came back, not permanently. Those pencil marks are still there. Were still there, I should say. I don't know if the Chens painted over them. I worked as an accountant at Morrison and Fletcher for 30 years. Started in 1983, retired in 2013 when I turned 65. I wasn't the kind of accountant who handled millions for corporations. I did taxes for small businesses, bookkeeping for local shops, estate planning for families who wanted to make sure their kids were taken care of. I kept everything organized, every receipt, every document. Filed in labeled folders in the cabinet in my home office. Utilities 2015-2020, medical records, home maintenance, tax returns 1984 present. Margaret used to tease me about it. She'd say, "Tom, if the house burns down, you're going to try to save the filing cabinet instead of me." I'd tell her I'd save her first, then come back for the files. She'd laugh. God, I loved her laugh. Margaret made pot roast every Sunday. The smell would fill the house by noon, beef and carrots and potatoes, rosemary from her garden, that rich brown gravy she made from scratch. Derek would complain about it when he was a teenager, said his friends' families ordered pizza or went out to restaurants. But when he came home from college, the first thing he'd ask was whether she was making pot roast. She tended her rose garden every morning. Had 32 bushes, different varieties, colors I couldn't name. Pink and coral and deep red, yellow like butter, white with pink edges. She wore these canvas gloves with purple flowers printed on them. Bought them at a garden center in 1997 and patched them with duct tape when they wore through. Refused to replace them. Said they were broken in just right. Those gloves were still by the back door when I packed my suitcase. I didn't take them. I should have. I wasn't thinking clearly. The cancer came in March of 2020, right when the world was shutting down for the pandemic. Ovarian, stage 3 by the time they found it. She fought for 18 months. Chemo that made her so sick she couldn't eat her own pot roast anymore. Hair that fell out in clumps she'd find on her pillow, weight that melted off her body until I could feel every bone when I held her. Derek visited twice during those 18 months, once right after diagnosis, once 3 months before she died. He lived 3 hours away in the city, Philadelphia, with a job in pharmaceutical sales that kept him traveling. At least that's what he told us. Margaret died in our bedroom on October 3, 2021 at 6:32 in the morning. I know the exact time because I was watching the clock, watching the numbers change while I held her hand and felt it go from warm to cool to cold. The hospice nurse was there. She cried too. Derek made it to the funeral. He stood next to me at the graveside, stiff in a suit I'd never seen before, checking his phone twice during the service. At the reception afterward, he asked me if I'd thought about what comes next, if I'd considered selling the house, moving into something more manageable. I told him I was staying. That house was Margaret, every inch of it. He nodded, didn't push, left the next morning. I kept everything exactly as she'd left it. Her reading glasses on the nightstand, folded on top of the mystery novel she'd been too sick to finish. Her gardening gloves by the back door. Her coffee mug in the cabinet, the one with the faded flowers that said "World's Best Mom." I couldn't use it, couldn't put it away either. I retired early at 65, the year before she died. My pension from Morrison and Fletcher plus Social Security came to $2,847 a month. The house was paid off. We'd burned the mortgage papers in 2009, had a little celebration in the backyard. No debt, no obligations, enough to live simply and maintain the house and tend Margaret's roses. Derek started visiting more often after she died. Every few months, he'd drive down from Philadelphia. We'd have dinner. I learned to make a passable pot roast, though nothing like hers, and he'd ask about my financial situation. How was I managing? Were the bills getting hard to handle? Had I thought about downsizing? I found it touching. My son worried about his old man, making sure I was okay. He suggested I add him as an emergency contact on my medical forms. Just in case something happens, Dad, so they can reach someone who can make decisions if you can't. Made sense. He was my only child, my only family, so I did. I signed the forms, gave them permission to contact Derek if I was incapacitated. Never gave him power of attorney. That's different. That's a legal document that requires a lawyer. But I gave him access. Made him the person they'd call. I thought I was being responsible, planning ahead, taking care of things the way an accountant should. I didn't know I was handing him the keys to everything I had left. The police officer took the paperwork from my shaking hands and read through it with the careful attention of someone who's seen every kind of domestic nightmare. His nameplate said Rodriguez. He had a wedding ring and kind eyes that got harder the more he read. "Mr. Castellano," he said finally, "according to these documents, your son had legal power of attorney to conduct this sale on your behalf. I never gave him power of attorney. The document here is dated February 28, 2024. It shows both your signature and his. I was in the hospital on February 28th. I had a heart attack on February 26th. I was unconscious. I was on a ventilator." Officer Rodriguez looked at me differently then, not with pity anymore, with something worse, recognition, like he'd seen this before. "Do you have documentation of that? Hospital records?" I pulled the discharge papers from my wallet with hands that wouldn't stop trembling. He read them, handed them back. "Sir, I believe you, but this is a civil matter. These people," he gestured to the Chens, "have legitimate purchase documents. They paid money. They followed the legal process. You'll need to hire an attorney and challenge the sale in court. I can't remove them from a property they legally own." The pain in my chest came back then, sharp and hot and terrifying, like someone was squeezing my heart in their fist. I put my hand over the bandages, felt my pulse hammering against my palm. Melissa Chen saw it. "Jason, he's having another heart attack." "I'm fine," I said, though I wasn't. "I'm fine." But I couldn't breathe right. The world tilted. Officer Rodriguez's hand was on my shoulder, firm and steadying. "Sir, do you need an ambulance?" "I need my house back." The words came out broken, pathetic. The sound of an old man who just realized how completely he'd been destroyed. Jason and Melissa Chen stood together on my porch, and I watched something change in their faces. The anger drained away. They looked at each other, and some silent communication passed between them. "Officer," Jason said quietly, "can we give him some time to get his things?" "It's your property," Rodriguez said. "That's your call." Melissa's voice was gentle. "Mr. Castellano, please come inside, take whatever you need, we won't rush you." I wanted to tell them to go to hell, that this was my house, not theirs, that they had no right to grant me permission to enter my own home. But they did have that right, legally, on paper, in every way that mattered to the law, so I went inside. The house smelled the same. That's what broke me. It smelled like home, like Margaret's lavender, like the lemon wood polish I used on the furniture, like 40 years of life lived in rooms that knew my footsteps. I had 45 minutes. That's what Melissa told me, apologetic and crying herself now. They had movers coming at 9 o'clock. I needed to be gone by then. 45 minutes to pack a life. I pulled one suitcase from the hall closet. Navy blue, bought in 1996 for a trip to see Derek graduate high school. I opened it on my bed, and stared at the empty space inside. Margaret's photo from the nightstand, the framed one from our 25th anniversary, both of us smiling at some restaurant I can't remember now. Her wedding ring, which I'd kept in my drawer because I couldn't bear to bury it with her. My own clothes, grabbed randomly from the closet, underwear, socks. The gray sweater she'd given me for Christmas in 2019. I went to the filing cabinet in my office, pulled folders. Tax returns, house deed, insurance policies, Margaret medical records. I didn't know what I'd need, didn't know what mattered in court, took everything I could fit. The kitchen was impossible. I stood there looking at her coffee mug, her gloves by the door, the pot roast pan in the cabinet. Couldn't take any of it, couldn't choose. My hands wouldn't work right. I walked back to the doorframe in the kitchen, ran my fingers over the pencil marks. September 14th, 1988. September 14th, 1995. September 14th, 2003. Derek growing up in careful increments, measured and recorded and celebrated. Melissa Chen appeared in the doorway. She was crying. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "We didn't know, we would never have. It's not your fault." But it didn't matter whose fault it was. The marks would be painted over. Derek's childhood erased. Margaret's house given to strangers who seemed kind but weren't us. I tried calling Derek again. And again, 17 times total. Each time his voicemail, each time that casual voice. "Hey, this is Derek, leave a message." I wanted to scream into the phone, wanted to beg, wanted to demand an explanation. I left one message, only one. "Derek, it's Dad, call me back, please. I don't understand what's happening. Just call me back." My voice broke on the last word. I deleted it and tried again, trying to sound calmer, more in control. Couldn't do it. Sent the broken version. At 8:30 p.m., I carried my suitcase to the car. The Chen stood on the porch watching. The locksmith was gone. The new deadbolt gleamed in the porch light. My hands shook so badly I couldn't zip the suitcase. Jason Chen came down the steps and did it for me. Didn't say anything, just zipped it closed and stepped back. I drove away at 8:47 p.m., checked the rearview mirror once and saw my house getting smaller. The house where I'd lived for 40 years. House where Margaret died. The house Derek had sold while I was fighting to stay alive. The Motel 6 on Route 42 had a vacancy sign in flickering neon. $79.99 for a room that smelled like stale cigarettes and industrial bleach. The carpet was brown with stains I didn't want to identify. The bedspread was polyester and rough against my hands. I sat on the edge of the bed without turning on the lights and listened to the sound of the highway through the thin walls. This was my life now. This was what my son had left me. I stayed at the Motel 6 for 11 days. Every morning I woke up disoriented, reaching for Margaret in a bed that wasn't mine, in a room that smelled wrong. The highway noise never stopped. 18-wheelers downshifting at 3 a.m., car alarms, voices through walls thin as paper. I ate convenience store sandwiches, turkey and cheese in plastic triangles that tasted like cardboard, and regret. Lost 12 pounds I couldn't afford to lose. My pants hung loose. My wedding ring spun around my finger. On day 4, Derek finally responded. Not a call, a text message. "Dad, you were never going to leave that house. I needed the money. You'll understand someday." I read it 17 times, tried to find something else in those words, some hint of apology, some acknowledgement that he'd destroyed me. There was nothing. I called him anyway. Voicemail again, always voicemail. I tried other family. My sister Linda in Arizona. We hadn't spoken in 6 years, not since we fought over our mother's estate. She didn't answer, didn't call back. My cousin Robert, who'd been at Margaret's funeral, sent the call to voicemail after 2 rings. The kind of deliberate rejection that tells you everything you need to know. I was alone. On day 7, I moved to an extended stay hotel off Highway 30, $52 a night instead of $80, cheaper. Still too expensive for a man living on $2,847 a month. I did the math obsessively. $52 times 30 days is $1,560, more than half my monthly income, for a room with a kitchenette and a bed that sagged in the middle. I couldn't afford this, couldn't afford anything, but I had nowhere else to go. I drove past 447 Maple Drive 3 times that first week. Couldn't help myself. Would get in the car telling myself I was going to the grocery store, to the bank, anywhere else. Would end up on Maple Drive going 20 miles an hour past my own house. The first time the Chens were unloading a U-Haul. Furniture I didn't recognize, a life I wasn't part of. The second time, Jason Chen was on a ladder, taking down the shutters Margaret had painted. White paint chips falling like snow onto the driveway. The third time, Melissa was in the backyard with a man who carried a shovel. They were digging up Margaret's rose garden, all 32 bushes, piling them in black garbage bags like they were trash, not living things she'd tended for 23 years. I watched them install a swing set where the roses had been. I didn't go back after that. Every night in that extended stay hotel, I opened my suitcase and went through the documents I'd grabbed. Spread them on the bed like they were pieces of a puzzle I could solve if I just looked hard enough. The house deed showing purchase date of June 14, 1984. The mortgage papers with paid in full stamped across them in red ink dated March 3, 2009. Margaret and I had celebrated that night. Cheap champagne and expensive steaks, freedom from debt after 25 years. Tax returns going back to 2004. I never threw anything away, an accountant's habit. Every year filed perfectly, every deduction documented, every number reconcilable. Insurance policies. Margaret's life insurance, which had paid for her funeral and left me with $18,000 I'd put in a CD earning 1.3% interest because I didn't know what else to do with money that felt like blood money. Our will. Dated October 12, 2010. Standard language leaving everything to each other, then to Derek upon the death of the surviving spouse. I read it over and over. To our beloved son, Derek James Castellano, we leave all worldly possessions, property, and assets. He'd inherited everything when Margaret died. Legally, on paper, but not the house, not yet, not until I died. He couldn't wait that long. I kept coming back to the power of attorney document, the one the Chens had shown me, the one dated February 28, 2024. My signature that wasn't my signature, close enough to fool a title company, close enough to fool a notary. But not close enough to fool me. The loops were wrong, the pressure. I'd signed my name 10,000 times in 30 years of accounting. I knew my own handwriting, this wasn't it. On day 9, lying in that sagging bed at 2:30 in the morning, I remembered something. The safety deposit box. Box 347 at First National Bank. I'd rented it in 1985, the year Derek was born. $22 a year, paid automatically from my checking account. I'd forgotten about it, not forgotten exactly, but stopped thinking about it. It was just there, part of the background of life. Margaret had made me promise never to close it. Important papers need a safe place, Tom, she'd said. Not just filing cabinets, somewhere fire can't reach. Inside that box were the originals, the real house deed, our marriage certificate, Derek's birth certificate. The first will we'd written in 1995, handwritten and notarized before we'd paid a lawyer to do a proper one. And my signature, my real signature on documents Derek had never seen in a box Derek didn't know existed. I sat up in bed. My heart was pounding, but not from pain this time, from something else. Hope, dangerous, fragile hope. Derek thought he'd been clever, thought he'd covered his tracks, thought his old man was too grief-stricken and too broken to fight back. But he didn't know about box 347. He didn't know I'd kept everything, every document, every receipt, every piece of paper that proved who I was and what I owned. I was an accountant, a careful man, a man who documented everything, and Derek had just made the biggest mistake of his life. I didn't sleep the rest of that night, just lay there in the dark watching headlights sweep across the ceiling and started planning. March 27th, 10:15 in the morning. First National Bank on Riverside Avenue. I'd been awake since 4 a.m. waiting for the bank to open. Sat in my car in the parking lot watching the sun come up over buildings I'd known my whole life, feeling like a stranger in my own town. The safety deposit room was in the basement, cold concrete walls, fluorescent lights that hummed. The bank employee, young woman, maybe 25, brought me box 347 and left me alone in one of the small private rooms. My hands shook as I opened it. Everything was there, just like Margaret had left it. The original house deed, paper yellowed but ink still dark. Our marriage certificate from 1981, the fancy calligraphy spelling out Thomas James Castellano and Margaret Ann Porter. Derek's birth certificate. The handwritten will from 1995 before we'd paid a lawyer. And documents with my real signature, dozens of them, years of proof of how I actually wrote my name. I spread them across the small table, started comparing, the power of attorney signature versus my real signatures. The differences were obvious once you looked carefully. The way I looped the T in Thomas, the slant of my letters, the pressure of my pen. Derek had been close, but not close enough. I was so focused I didn't hear anyone approach. "Excuse me, are you all right?" I looked up. A woman stood in the doorway of the private room. Early 40s, dark hair pulled back, wearing a gray suit. Professional but not corporate, something about her face, concern that looked genuine, not polite. "I'm fine," I said automatically, the lie everyone tells. "I don't mean to intrude," she hesitated. "I'm a lawyer. I was in the next room over and I heard you crying. I wanted to make sure you weren't having a medical emergency." I hadn't realized I was crying. I touched my face. My fingers came away wet. "I'm fine," I said again, and then the words just came out, unstoppable, like a dam breaking. "My son sold my house while I was in the hospital. He forged my signature and sold my house, and I'm living in an extended stay hotel and I don't know what to do." The woman's expression changed. Sympathy shifted to something harder, recognition. Did you say he forged your signature? Yes, I was unconscious. I had emergency heart surgery. He used power of attorney I never gave him. She stepped into the room. My name is Amanda Vickers. I'm an attorney specializing in elder fraud and financial exploitation. Her voice was controlled, but I could hear fury underneath. May I sit down? I nodded. She sat across from me, eyes already scanning the documents spread on the table. Tell me everything. So I did. The whole story poured out. The locksmith, the Chens, Derek's text message, the motel, all of it. She listened without interrupting, taking notes on her phone. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. My father died 3 years ago, she said finally. His caregiver convinced him to sign over power of attorney, cleaned out his accounts, sold his car, left him with nothing. By the time I found out, he was living in a nursing home paid for by Medicaid, and she was in the Bahamas. She looked at me. I became a lawyer because of what happened to him. This is what I do, Mr. Castellano. This is all I do. I can't afford a lawyer. I'm offering pro bono, no charge, but I need you to prove those documents were forged. Can you do that? I pushed the papers toward her. This is my real signature, 20 years of tax returns, bank documents, mortgage papers, and this, I pulled out my hospital discharge papers, proves I was in ICU on February 28, 2024, the day Derek supposedly got power of attorney. Amanda picked up the documents, studied them. Her hands were steady, but her jaw was tight. Mr. Castellano, I think we have a case. My heart started pounding, not the bad pounding, not the pain, something else, something I was afraid to name. But I can't, I stopped, started again. He's my son. He stole your house. I know, but he's counting on that, Amanda said. Her voice was gentle but firm. Men like your son count on you being too ashamed to fight back. They count on you protecting them even after they destroy you. They count on you choosing silence over justice because family is supposed to mean something. She leaned forward. Is that what your wife would want? I thought of Margaret. Margaret who'd fought cancer for 18 months without complaint. Margaret who'd never backed down from what was right, even when it was hard. Margaret who'd made me promise to keep the safety deposit box because important things needed protecting. No, I said. She'd tell me to fight. Then let's fight. Amanda pulled out her phone. I need to photograph these documents, the original deed, your real signatures, the hospital records, everything. She started taking pictures, careful, methodical, making sure every detail was captured. Here's what you need to understand, she said as she worked. If your son forged documents and sold your house, that's not just civil fraud, that's criminal. Wire fraud, forgery, elder exploitation. We're not just talking about getting your house back, Mr. Castellano. We're talking about prosecution. Prison? If we can prove it, yes, significant prison time. I thought about Derek as a little boy, pencil marks on the doorframe, his hand in mine at Margaret's funeral. Then I thought about his text message. You'll understand someday. I thought about him selling the house where his mother died, where he'd grown up, where 40 years of our lives lived in walls he'd given to strangers for cash. He's already spent the money, hasn't he? Amanda asked. I don't know. Let me guess, gambling, drugs, debt. I didn't answer, didn't need to. She'd seen this before. The good news, she said, is that we can void the sale if we prove fraud. The bad news is the Chens are innocent buyers. They paid real money. Someone has to make them whole. I don't have $340,000. No, but Derek does, or he will when we're done with him. She finished photographing and looked at me. The question is, are you ready to do this? Because once we start, there's no going back. Your son will face criminal charges. Your family, what's left of it, will probably never recover. People will take sides. It will be ugly. My hands were shaking. I was 67 years old, tired, grieving, afraid, but I wasn't broken. Let's do it, I said. My voice came out steady, stronger than I felt. Let's get my house back. Amanda Vickers smiled, not a happy smile, a warrior's smile. Then let's go to war, Mr. Castellano. Amanda Vickers moved like a woman who'd been waiting for this fight her whole career. Within 3 days of our meeting at the bank, she'd filed a criminal fraud complaint with the county prosecutor's office and a civil lawsuit to void the house sale. Papers I couldn't have begun to navigate on my own appeared in neat stacks on her desk with sticky notes marking where I needed to sign. We're going after him on every front, she said. Criminal and civil. He won't know which way to run. On April 2nd, she brought in a forensic document examiner. Henry Park was 58 years old, Korean-American, with reading glasses that hung from a chain around his neck and hands that were unnervingly steady. He'd testified in over 200 fraud cases. His office smelled like coffee and paper, and the particular kind of focus that comes from spending decades staring at people's handwriting. He placed the forged power of attorney under a magnification lamp that made the signature look enormous and alien. Unsophisticated forgery, he said after 10 minutes. His voice was matter-of-fact, clinical. Similar letter forms but wrong pressure points and tremor patterns. The forger tried to copy the general shape, but didn't understand the biomechanics of how Mr. Castellano actually forms his letters. He showed me under the magnification. The T in Thomas that Derek had drawn with hesitant, careful strokes. My real T was confident, fast, slightly slanted from decades of writing ledgers left to right. The forger also used a different pen, Henry continued. Ballpoint versus rollerball, different ink viscosity. If this goes to court, I can demonstrate at least 7 points of divergence from Mr. Castellano's authenticated signatures. Will that be enough? I asked. Combined with the hospital records showing you were physically incapable of signing, yes, this is conclusive. Amanda laid my hospital records on the desk next to the forged documents. ICU admission notes. February 26, 2024, 11:47 p.m. Acute myocardial infarction. Emergency surgery at 2:15 a.m. on February 27th. Intubated and sedated for 72 hours. Sedation score recorded every 4 hours, 4 on the RASS scale, indicating deep sedation. On February 28th at 2:30 p.m., the alleged time of signature, I'd been unconscious with a tube down my throat and machines breathing for me. He picked the day you were most vulnerable, Amanda said quietly. The day you couldn't possibly defend yourself. I felt something cold settle in my chest, not pain, clarity. My son had planned this, carefully, deliberately, while I was dying. Amanda subpoenaed Derek's bank records on April 5th. They arrived 3 days later, and I watched her face change as she read them. Jesus Christ, she whispered. What? She turned her computer screen toward me. Bank statements for Derek James Castellano, account ending in 7743. March 13, 2024, deposit $340,000. Wire transfer from Riverside Title Company. The house sale. My house converted to numbers in Derek's account. I stared at that number, $340,000, the sum total of 40 years of mortgage payments, maintenance, love, and life. But it was what came next that made my hands clench into fists. March 14th, withdrawal $85,000, cashier's check to Caesars Atlantic City. March 14th, withdrawal $52,000, cashier's check to Borgata Casino. March 15th, withdrawal $75,000. Wire transfer to Capital One marked credit card payment. March 16th, withdrawal $45,000, cashier's check to an entity called Northside Holdings LLC. March 17th, withdrawal $30,000, ATM withdrawals various locations. $287,000, Amanda said. Gone in 72 hours, he burned through almost all of it immediately. Gambling debts, I said, my voice sounded hollow. And creditors, he was drowning. She scrolled further. Current balance, $18,412, he's already broke again. I thought about the text message. I needed the money, needed it, past tense, already spent, already gone. There's more, Amanda said. She pulled up another document. I ran a property search on your address. Tom, did you know there was a home equity loan taken out against 447 Maple Drive in August of 2022? That's impossible. I never, $50,000 from Meridian Home Lending, signed with your forged signature. She showed me the loan documents, another signature that looked like mine but wasn't. He's been stealing from you for years. The room tilted. I gripped the edge of the desk. How long? My voice cracked. How long has he been doing this? Amanda kept clicking through documents. I'm finding redirected Social Security payments, small amounts, 100 or 200 at a time, going back 18 months. An investment account you opened in 2015, closed in January 2023 with the $43,000 balance transferred to an account in Derek's name. Each revelation was another knife, another betrayal, another piece of my life Derek had stolen while I grieved for Margaret and trusted him to care about my welfare. How much total? I asked. Amanda calculated silently. Including the house, approximately $467,000 over 3 years. I couldn't breathe. But there's an obstacle, Amanda said after a long moment. The Chens, what about them? They're legally defined as innocent purchasers for value. They paid fair market price, they conducted due diligence, they had no reason to know the sale was fraudulent, the law protects them. So I can't get the house back. Not unless we can prove they had constructive knowledge of the fraud, which we can't, or unless someone buys them out for what they paid, $340,000. She looked at me. How much do you have in savings? $12,847. The number sounded absurd, pathetic. There's another path, Amanda said. If Derek is criminally convicted of fraud, the court can order restitution as part of his sentence. Restitution means he has to pay back what he stole. If the court orders him to compensate the Chens and return the house to you, that becomes a legal obligation. But he doesn't have the money. Then he'll have a restitution order that follows him for the rest of his life. Wage garnishment, asset seizure, he'll never be free of it. She paused. But first we have to find him. What do you mean? I sent a private investigator to Derek's last known address in Philadelphia. The apartment was abandoned. Rent hasn't been paid since February. Neighbors say they haven't seen him in weeks. The hope that had been building crumbled. He's running, I said. Probably, which makes prosecution harder. We can't serve him papers, can't compel him to court. Amanda's jaw tightened. He's not answering his phone. His employer says he stopped showing up for work and his credit cards show no activity since March 17th. He's either using cash or he's gone underground. I felt the case slipping away, felt justice slipping through my fingers like water. So that's it, he wins? I didn't say that. Amanda's phone buzzed. She looked at the screen and her expression changed. Hold on. I'm getting a call from a number I don't recognize. She answered, put it on speaker. This is Amanda Vickers. Ms. Vickers, my name is Vanessa Castellano. Well, Vanessa Torres now. I was married to Derek Castellano from 2014 to 2019. The woman's voice was cautious but determined. I heard through mutual friends that you're representing his father in a fraud case. Amanda's eyes met mine. Yes, I am. How can I help you, Ms. Torres? I have evidence, emails, text messages. Conversations we had while we were married about his father's house and his plans to, her voice broke. To handle the old man, that's what he called it, handling the old man, my breath caught. I kept everything, Vanessa continued. I knew someday it might matter. Derek always said his father would never fight back. That Tom was too weak, too grief-stricken after his wife died. He said, she paused. He said the old man will just let it happen because he doesn't have the balls to take his own son to court. Amanda was already typing. Ms. Torres, are you willing to testify to this? Yes, I want to help. Derek destroyed our marriage with his gambling and his lies. I can't let him destroy his father too. Can you come to my office tomorrow? I'll be there. After she hung up, Amanda looked at me with something like triumph in her eyes. Tom, we've got him. Derek planned this. Discussed it while your wife was still alive. We can prove premeditation. I should have felt victorious. Instead, I felt sick. Because my son, my only child, had been plotting my destruction for years, and the woman he'd married and divorced knew more about his plans than I ever had. May 8th, 2024. Courtroom 4B, County Superior Court. They'd found Derek 3 weeks earlier at the Tropicana Casino in Atlantic City, trying to use a fake ID to open a new line of credit. Security had called the police, outstanding warrants for fraud. He'd been extradited back to Pennsylvania in handcuffs. Now he sat 30 feet away from me in an orange jumpsuit, ankles shackled, hands cuffed in front of him. He wouldn't look at me, kept his eyes on the table in front of him, on his public defender's yellow legal pad, anywhere but at his father. I couldn't stop looking at him. He'd lost weight. His hair was longer, unwashed. There were shadows under his eyes that made him look older than 39. He looked like a stranger. Maybe he always had been. The prosecutor was a woman named Jennifer Walsh, 42 years old, with silver streaks in her dark hair and a reputation for winning elder fraud cases. Amanda had told me she'd requested this case personally. Your Honor, she began, the people will demonstrate that the defendant, Derek James Castellano, engaged in a calculated, premeditated scheme to defraud his own father of approximately $467,000 in assets, including the family home, through forgery, identity theft, and elder exploitation. Judge Morrison, 68 years old, gray beard, eyes that missed nothing, nodded. Proceed. Jennifer called Henry Park to the stand first. He brought his magnification equipment, his comparison charts, his decades of expertise, set them up methodically while the courtroom waited in silence. Mr. Park, Jennifer said, you've examined the power of attorney document at the center of this case. What are your conclusions? Henry adjusted his glasses, spoke with the calm certainty of a man stating scientific fact. The signature attributed to Thomas Castellano on the power of attorney document dated February 28, 2024, is inconsistent with Mr. Castellano's authenticated signatures in the following 7 ways. He projected images on the screen. My signature blown up to giant size. The forgery beside it. First, the initial stroke of the letter T in Thomas. Mr. Castellano forms this with a confident downward stroke followed by a rightward crossbar. The questioned signature shows hesitation marks, multiple attempts to form the stroke correctly. Second, the loop structure in the of Castellano. Mr. Castellano creates a closed loop. The forgery shows an open loop with inconsistent pressure. Third, he went through all 7 points. Pressure patterns, pen lifts, letter spacing, tremor analysis, each one a nail in Derek's coffin. In my professional opinion, based on 32 years of forensic document examination, the signature on this power of attorney was not written by Thomas Castellano. It is a forgery executed by someone attempting to replicate his handwriting without understanding the biomechanical patterns of his actual writing. Derek's public defender, young man, maybe 28, looked exhausted, had no questions. What could he ask? The science was irrefutable. Then Amanda stood. She moved to the evidence table and picked up a stack of papers I recognized. My hospital records. Your Honor, I'd like to enter into evidence the medical records from Mercy General Hospital documenting Mr. Thomas Castellano's condition on February 28, 2024, the alleged date of signature. Proceed. Amanda read from the records. Her voice was clear, professional, devastating. February 28, 2024, 2:30 p.m. Patient Thomas James Castellano. Status, post-operative day 2 following emergency coronary artery bypass surgery. Current condition, intubated, mechanically ventilated. Sedation protocol, propofol continuous infusion. RASS sedation score, -4, indicating deep sedation with no response to verbal or physical stimulation. She looked up at the judge. Your Honor, on February 28th at 2:30 p.m., the exact time the power of attorney document claims to have been signed, Thomas Castellano was unconscious in the ICU with a breathing tube down his throat and machines breathing for him. He could not have signed his own name, let alone a legal document. He could not have consented to anything. He was, by every medical and legal definition, incapacitated. Judge Morrison looked at Derek for the first time. The disgust on his face was unmistakable. Continue, Ms. Vickers. Amanda entered Derek's bank records next, projected them on the screen for the entire courtroom to see. March 13th, $340,000 deposit. March 14th through 17th, $287,000 in withdrawals to casinos and creditors. The defendant received the proceeds from the fraudulent sale of his father's home and spent 84% of it within 72 hours. Primarily on gambling debts and credit card payments. She showed the home equity loan documents from 2022, another forged signature, another $50,000 stolen. This was not a one-time desperate act, Your Honor. This was a pattern of systematic theft spanning at least 3 years. Then she called Vanessa Torres to the stand. Derek looked up for the first time when his ex-wife walked into the courtroom. His face went pale. Vanessa was 40 years old, dark hair pulled back, wearing a navy blue dress. She'd been pretty once. Now she just looked tired and sad. She was sworn in, sat down, folded her hands in her lap. Ms. Torres, Amanda said gently, you were married to the defendant from 2014 to 2019? Yes. During your marriage, did Mr. Castellano discuss his father or his father's assets? Constantly. Her voice was quiet but steady. He was obsessed with the house, with his inheritance. He felt it should be his already, that his father was wasting it by just living there. Did he ever discuss plans to obtain those assets? Yes, many times. She took a breath. He said his father's heart was weak, that it was only a matter of time before something happened. He said when his father went in for surgery, when that happened, that would be his window. Amanda held up her phone. I'm showing you text messages from January 15, 2024, sent from Derek Castellano's phone number. Do you recognize these? Yes, he sent them to me. We were still in occasional contact after the divorce. Please read them for the court. Vanessa's hands shook as she took the phone. Her voice shook too. The old man's heart is giving out. When he goes in for surgery, that's my window. He'll be too out of it to know what happened until it's done. By the time he realizes, it'll be too late. He won't fight me anyway. He's too weak. The courtroom was completely silent. I felt tears on my face, not grief anymore, not sadness. Rage, pure burning rage at the man who'd plotted my destruction while I mourned his mother and loved him unconditionally. And did the defendant express any remorse about this plan? Amanda asked. No, he said. Vanessa's voice broke. He said his father would never take him to court because the old man doesn't have the balls to destroy his own son. He said Tom would just accept it and move into a nursing home and everyone would get what they deserved. Derek moved suddenly in his seat. His public defender grabbed his arm, whispered something urgent, but Derek shook him off, stood up. The shackles clanked. Dad! His voice was shaking, desperate. Dad, I was going to pay you back. I just needed. Judge Morrison's gavel came down like a gunshot. Mr. Castellano, you will sit down and be silent. You will have your opportunity to speak at sentencing. Do you understand me? Derek's public defender pulled him back into his chair, but Derek kept looking at me, eyes pleading. I was going to pay you back, he said again, quieter now. I just needed time. The debts, they were. One more word, Judge Morrison said, and I'll hold you in contempt. Derek's mouth closed, but he kept staring at me, kept waiting for me to speak, to forgive, to save him. I said nothing. Judge Morrison looked at the evidence spread before him, the forged signatures, the hospital records, the bank statements. The text messages planning my exploitation while I was dying. "I've heard enough for today," he said. "Based on the evidence presented, I'm finding probable cause to proceed with all charges. Wire fraud, forgery, identity theft, elder exploitation, financial abuse of a vulnerable adult." He looked at Derek. "Mr. Castellano, I'm ordering your immediate remand without bail. You are a flight risk and a danger to the victim, who is your own father." The bailiff moved toward Derek. Derek's face crumbled. He looked at me one last time and mouthed two words, "I'm sorry." I stared back at him. Stone-faced, silent. He'd spent 3 years stealing from me. He'd sold the house where his mother died while I was unconscious and fighting for my life. He'd called me weak, thought I'd never fight back. He was right about one thing: the old Tom wouldn't have fought back. But that man died in the ICU on February 28th. The man sitting in this courtroom was someone different, someone harder, someone who'd learned that love without boundaries isn't love at all. It's just enabling. And I was done enabling. June 3rd, 2024, County Jail, Riverside Facility. The visiting room smelled like industrial cleaner and fear, bleach and sweat and desperation. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting everything in a sickly yellow-green that made everyone look corpse pale. I sat at a metal table bolted to the floor. In front of me was a glass partition, scratched and cloudy from thousands of hands pressing against it. A phone hung on the wall to my right. On the other side of the glass, an identical phone, an identical metal stool. I almost didn't come. Derek had requested this meeting through his public defender, said he needed to explain, needed me to hear his side. I'd stared at the request form for 3 days before checking the box marked approved. Amanda had warned me. "You don't owe him this, you don't owe him anything." But I came anyway, not for him, for me. Because I needed to look him in the eye one last time and know with absolute certainty that I was doing the right thing. The door on the other side of the glass opened. Derek shuffled in, hands cuffed in front of him, orange jumpsuit hanging loose on a frame that had lost 20 pounds. His hair was long and greasy. Stubble covered his jaw. There were lines around his eyes and mouth that hadn't been there 3 months ago. He looked 10 years older than 39. He sat down heavily, picked up the phone. Looked at me through the scratched glass with eyes that were red-rimmed and desperate. I picked up my phone. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. "Dad," his voice cracked on the word. "Thank you for coming. I wasn't sure you would." I said nothing. "I need to explain," he continued, words tumbling out fast like he'd rehearsed them. "I was desperate. The gambling, it got out of control. The debts, Dad, you don't understand. These people were going to hurt me, really hurt me." I panicked. "I made a terrible mistake, but I never meant to." "You never meant to what, Derek?" My voice came out quiet, hard. "Make me homeless, steal the house your mother died in, watch me sleep in a motel while you cashed out 40 years of our lives." He flinched like I'd hit him. "I thought you'd move to a retirement home anyway," he said quickly. "You're alone in that big house. It's too much for you to maintain. I thought I was just accelerating the inevitable, getting what I was going to inherit anyway. While I was unconscious, while I was dying." "You weren't dying. You had surgery. You're fine now." The casual dismissal of how close I'd come to death took my breath away. "You forged my signature while I had a tube down my throat, Derek, while machines were breathing for me, while nurses were checking every 15 minutes to make sure my heart was still beating. I didn't have a choice. You had every choice." I leaned forward. "You chose to steal from me for 3 years. You chose to forge documents. You chose to sell the house where your mother died, where you grew up, where every memory of our family lives in walls you gave away for gambling money." His face crumpled. Tears started running down his cheeks. "I'm sorry. God, Dad, I'm so sorry. I know I messed up. I know I hurt you. But please," his voice rose, desperate. "Please, you have to tell them you forgive me. Tell the prosecutor you don't want me in prison. Talk to the judge. Tell them I can pay you back, that we can work this out as a family." "A family? I'm your son, your only child. You can't let them put me away." Something inside me broke, not my heart. That had broken already in a motel room that smelled like bleach and cigarettes. This was different. This was the last chain of obligation snapping, the final thread of guilt severing. "You stopped being my son when you forged my signature while I was fighting for my life." "Dad, no. You stopped being my son when you called me weak, when you told your ex-wife I didn't have the balls to fight back, when you gambled away $340,000 in 72 hours while I lived in a motel wondering if I'd end up on the street. I was going to pay you back. With what money, Derek? You're broke. You've always been broke. You spent everything, the moment you got your hands on it." His tears were coming harder now. He pressed his hand against the glass. "Please, I'm begging you, I'll go to rehab. I'll get help for the gambling. I'll do whatever you want. Just don't let them send me to prison. 7 years, Dad. They're talking about 7 years. "I know. You know." His expression shifted from pleading to disbelief. "You know, and you're still. You thought I was too weak to fight back," I said. My voice was steady now, calm. "You thought grief made me stupid." You thought I'd just accept what you did because family is supposed to protect family, even when family destroys you. I'm your son. Your mother saw this in you, Derek, years ago, this selfishness, this entitlement. She never said it out loud, but I know she saw it. I told her she was wrong. I defended you, told her you were just going through a phase, that you'd grow out of it. I paused, let the words hang between us. I should have listened to her. Derek's face went white, then red. The tears stopped. Something harder replaced them. So that's it. His voice changed. The pleading was gone. Now it was anger, bitter, ugly anger. You're really going to let them put me away, send your only child to prison? I'm not sending you anywhere. You did this to yourself. You could stop it. One word from you and they'd drop the charges. No, Derek, they wouldn't. You committed crimes, multiple felonies. The prosecutor doesn't need my permission to proceed. But you could ask them not to. You could tell the judge you forgive me. I'm here to tell you one thing, I said. You're getting everything you deserve. The Chens are being compensated through your restitution order. The court is voiding the sale. I'm getting my house back. And you, 7 years, that's what your lawyer says you're facing, maybe more depending on the judge. Derek's face twisted with rage. He slammed his fist against the glass. The sound echoed through the visiting room. A guard moved toward us. You're really going to do this? Derek shouted. You're really going to destroy me? Your own son? I stood up, placed the phone down gently on its cradle. Through the scratched glass, I looked at my son, the boy I'd carried on my shoulders, the teenager whose height I'd measured on the doorframe, the man who'd stood beside me at his mother's funeral, and I said clearly, carefully, so he could read my lips through the glass, "You put yourself away." I turned and walked toward the door. Behind me, Derek was screaming something, pounding on the glass. The guard was restraining him, pulling him back from the partition. I didn't turn around. I walked through the door, through the security checkpoint, through the lobby with its plastic chairs and vending machines, out into the June sunlight that felt warm on my face. My son was in jail. My son was going to prison, and for the first time in 3 months I could breathe. September 15th, 2024. I stood in the kitchen of 447 Maple Drive, watching morning light slant through windows I'd cleaned yesterday, and felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace, not happiness, not yet. Maybe not ever, not the way it used to be, but peace. The quiet kind that comes after a storm when you're exhausted and scarred but still standing. The house was mine again. The court had voided the sale on July 22nd. Derek's restitution order covered the full compensation to the Chens, $340,000 plus their closing costs and moving expenses. His seized assets, what little was left, went toward that. The rest would come from wage garnishment for the rest of his life, assuming he ever worked again. The Chens had been heartbroken. Melissa cried on my doorstep the day they moved out, apologizing over and over for something that wasn't her fault. They'd been victims too, caught in Derek's web of lies. They sent me a card last week, just a simple note. "We're glad you got your home back. We hope you find peace there." I kept it on the refrigerator. The house felt different now, not bad, just changed, like a scar that's healed but left a mark you can't ignore. I'd repainted the living room, couldn't stand the color anymore. Margaret's sage green that I'd loved for 20 years suddenly felt suffocating. Now it was a warm cream, lighter. Easier to breathe in. Margaret's rose garden was replanted. Not the same bushes, those were gone, ripped out and thrown away by the Chens before they knew what they were destroying. But new plants, different varieties, pink and yellow and coral, they'd bloom next spring. I couldn't sleep in our bedroom yet. Tried once and lasted 20 minutes before the walls started closing in. So I'd converted the guest room. New bed, new sheets, different view out the window. Some changes were necessary. But I wasn't alone anymore. That was the biggest difference. Amanda stopped by every Thursday evening. Sometimes she brought dinner. Sometimes I cooked. We'd sit at the kitchen table and talk about cases, about life, about loss. She'd lost her father. I'd lost my son. Not the same, but close enough. Last week she brought her dad. Robert Vickers was 72, widowed 5 years ago, still sharp as a tack and funny in a dry way that reminded me of Margaret. We talked about baseball and gardens and what it's like to rebuild a life when you thought you were too old to start over. "You're never too old," Robert had said, "until you decide you are." I was trying to believe that. I joined a support group for elder fraud victims, meets every Tuesday at the community center. 8 of us, ages ranging from 57 to 83, all of us robbed by people we trusted. Family members, caregivers, friends. I shared my story. Helped others understand they weren't alone, weren't stupid, weren't weak. One woman, Patricia, 79 years old, her daughter had stolen $200,000 from her over 6 years. She was so ashamed she hadn't told anyone for 2 years after she found out. "My daughter," she kept saying. "How do I send my own daughter to jail?" I told her what I'd learned. That protecting someone from consequences isn't love. That sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let someone face what they've done. She filed charges last month. I started volunteering at the senior center too, teaching people how to organize their documents, how to protect themselves, what warning signs to watch for. Simple things I'd known my whole career but never thought to share. Keep copies of everything, I told them. Keep them somewhere safe, a safety deposit box, a trusted friend's house. Somewhere the person you're protecting yourself from can't reach. I thought about box 347, about Margaret making me promise never to close it. She'd known, maybe not consciously, but she'd known I needed protection even if I didn't. The pencil marks were still on the kitchen doorframe. I'd thought about painting over them, about erasing that evidence of Derek's childhood, of the years when I believed he was good and kind and mine. But I didn't. They're part of the history. The good years before everything broke. The little boy who brought me dandelions from the yard. The teenager who helped me fix the porch railing one summer. Those moments were real even if what came after was a betrayal. I think about Derek sometimes. Late at night when the house is quiet and memories slip through my defenses, I grieve for him, not the man in prison, the boy he was, or the boy I thought he was. I'll never know which was real, if he changed or if I just never saw him clearly. I changed my will. Everything goes to charity now. The Riverside Elder Advocacy Fund specifically. Amanda helped me set it up. When I die, this house, my savings, my pension, survivor benefits, all of it goes to helping other people fight back against the family members who abuse them. Derek will get nothing. On my kitchen table, next to Margaret's photo, the one from our 25th anniversary, is a new picture. Me, Amanda, and Robert at a baseball game last Saturday. Minor league, cheap seats, hot dogs that cost too much. All three of us smiling, Amanda in the middle with her arms around both our shoulders. Margaret would have liked Amanda, would have liked Robert, would have liked seeing me find my way back to something resembling a life. Life isn't what it was, it never will be. Margaret is gone. Derek is gone too in a different way. The family I thought I had doesn't exist, but I'm still here, in the house I bought 40 years ago. In the kitchen where I measured my son's height. In the garden where Margaret's roses bloom in different colors now. It's not the ending I imagined when I carried Margaret over the threshold in 1984, young and in love and thinking we had forever. But it's mine, and that's enough. Here's what I've learned about betrayal. It doesn't kill you, but it changes you in ways you can never undo. I thought family meant unconditional trust, unconditional love. That's what I believed for 67 years. That blood meant something sacred, that the boy I raised, the son I sacrificed for, would never deliberately destroy me. I was wrong. But I learned something more important. Love without boundaries isn't love at all. It's enabling, it's permission. It's telling someone that no matter what they do, no matter how much they hurt you, you'll always protect them from the consequences. That's not love. That's cowardice dressed up as virtue. I almost didn't fight back. You need to understand that. For days after I found out what Derek had done, I sat in that motel room thinking about how good fathers don't send their sons to prison. How family is supposed to forgive. How I should just accept it, move on, let it go. The shame was overwhelming. I felt like I'd failed as a parent. Like somehow if I'd been a better father, Derek wouldn't have become the kind of man who steals from his dying parent. But that's exactly what people like Derek count on. They count on your shame, your guilt. Your belief that you somehow deserve what they did to you. You don't. I didn't fail Derek. Derek failed himself. And protecting him from the consequences of his choices wasn't protecting him at all. It was protecting the disease, not the person. It was enabling the very behavior that destroyed him, so I fought back. And I won, not completely. I didn't get back the son I thought I had. I didn't get back Margaret. I didn't get back the innocence of believing family was safe. But I got my house. My dignity, my right to live in peace in the home I built with my own hands and my own money. If you're watching this, if you're facing elder fraud, financial abuse, or betrayal by someone you love, I need you to hear this. You are not alone. You are not weak for being victimized. The people who prey on family trust are skilled manipulators. They know exactly how to exploit your love, your guilt, your shame. They count on your silence. They count on your exhaustion. They count on you believing that good people don't destroy their own families, even when their families have already destroyed them. Fight back. Document everything. Keep copies of important papers somewhere safe. Tell someone you trust. Find your Amanda, the ally who believes you, who sees your pain and says, this is wrong and we're going to fix it. You deserve justice. You deserve peace. You deserve to live without fear in your own home. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Not your family, not your friends. Not the voice in your head that says good people just forgive and move on. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and for the person who hurt you is to let them face the full weight of what they've done. If this story resonated with you, if it helped you feel less alone, please hit that like button. Subscribe to this channel. Share this video with anyone who needs to hear that fighting back is possible, that survival is possible, that peace is possible even after betrayal tears your world apart. And I want to ask you something because your voice matters. Your story matters. Have you ever had to choose between protecting yourself and protecting someone you love? How did you decide? What did that choice cost you, and would you make it again? Leave your story in the comments. Be as detailed or as private as you need to be, but share it. Because somewhere out there, someone is sitting in a motel room or an extended stay hotel or their car in a parking lot, wondering if they're strong enough to fight back. Your voice might be the one they need to hear. Your story might be the one that saves them. So share it for them, for yourself. For everyone who's ever been told that family loyalty means accepting abuse. It's 6 o'clock on a September evening as I finish telling you this. I'm sitting on my porch, the same porch where Margaret and I used to watch thunderstorms. There's a cup of coffee in my hand, black, 2 sugars, the way I've always taken it. Margaret's roses are blooming beside me. Different colors than before, but beautiful, still beautiful. The sun is setting over the valley, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold that Margaret would have loved. The air smells like autumn coming, like change, like possibility. I'm not looking at what I lost, not anymore. I'm looking at what I reclaimed. My home, my dignity, my right to peace in the years I have left. This isn't the ending I imagined when I was 30 years old and carrying my bride over that threshold. It's not the ending I dreamed of when I measured Derek's height on the kitchen doorframe year after year. But it's an ending I can live with, and sometimes that's enough. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here, and if you're fighting your own battle right now, keep fighting. You're stronger than you know.